Welcome back, everyone. It's the FantasyPros Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Scott Bogman. Follow me on the Twitter at Bogman Sports. I'm joined, as always, by Pat Fitzmaurice at Fitz_FF on the Twitter machine. Today on the show, we are going to be talking about Dynasty QB rankings. We've got a bunch of them. They are a lot of fun to put together. A little harder than I thought, Fitz, at the top here. But we'll dive into the subject matter in a little bit. Let's talk about the Super Bowl to start, Fitzy. I mean, what a great game it was. Mired in controversy now because the end with the penalty and everything. How did you enjoy it? Did you win some money? Did you lose some money? What do you think about that? And what do you think about the call at the very end of the game?
Yeah, slightly on the plus side with the Bats Bogs. It could have been a lot better, though. I had made a bet earlier in the playoffs when I was getting Patrick Mahomes at 9-1 to finish as the NFL playoff passing leader. So at the time, the odds were not great for him, but I kind of ran the numbers through my head, and I'm like, well, if he gets to the Super Bowl, I think he's going to beat this. And he needed 201 yards to do it. And he didn't get to 201 yards. I didn't think it was possible for him not to throw for 201 yards,
especially in a
barring
win.
An injury. Yeah, so it was good. You know, the flag. Am I throwing that flag? If I'm an official, I probably would need to witness a murder to throw it. But I realize some of these dudes, they're probably told to, treat a play in the final 2 minutes of the Super Bowl the same way they would treat a fourth quarter preseason call. So right. I get it. To me, the officiating was less of a story than the NFL's weird decision to put non-stick cooking spray on the field before the game. I mean, what?
At least it cost them $800,000 to do it too.
Oh my God.
Just Boggs. Crazy.
Well, yeah. And we kind of saw something similar in that Bills-Bengals game where, to me, a big angle on that was the Bengals had all these offensive line injuries and how were they going to block the Bills? Then they got the benefit of snow, and it was the Bills pass rushers couldn't get any traction. Here you've got this Eagles pass rush that led the NFL in sacks and couldn't get any traction. It seemed like it was this bizarre field situation.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Way less talk about that because it's not the obvious thing. But yeah, I mean, and this has happened at Fiesta Bowls as well. They really got to get a hold of this in Arizona if you're going to continue to use this place, for national championship games, college playoff games, NFL games, and Super Bowls. The field really needs to be a point of emphasis moving forward. I mean, that's ridiculous. You should not.
What about you? Any other big takeaways from the game?
I mean, just Mahomes is amazing, and we're seeing it unfold before us. He's gonna be a guy that, I don't know if he's gonna challenge Tom Brady or anything. I don't know if anyone's gonna do that. But if I had to pick someone right now, it's Pat Mahomes, man. I mean, just to see the way all of that works. Also, still weird to see Eric Bieniemy without getting head coaching jobs. I mean, I have heard that he's extremely abrasive. And that has been kind of the issue is even in interviews, he's abrasive with owners and things like that. So I don't know if any of that's true, but I mean, both the Eagles coordinators got head coaching jobs, and Eric Bieniemy has been interviewed a million times, still hasn't had a job. Steve Spagnuolo's done it before. I think he's kind of out of that circle of head coaching. So it's just a little weird to see that still going on. But the quarterback play, Jalen Hurts was outstanding as well. Didn't have a very good playoff until the Super Bowl. And in the Super Bowl, he really took over. So that was fun to see. But, man, I didn't bet the game because I knew it was going to be close. I said, I think Philly is the winner, but I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes was basically my thought process. And that paid off for me. I bet props instead and won some money. So nice. I like that, definitely. But let's talk about some QBs, Pat. We talked about this on the Senior Bowl show with Thor last week that the QBs coming in, we have the top four, we have Hendon Hooker, and then we have, the Wild West. The rest, the bottom is kind of getting sorted out right now in terms of the class. But I don't think it's not as tough to rank these guys, but there's just not as many good QBs as there has been in the past. And we have just a merry-go-round of quarterbacks this offseason and a lot of possible changes. So I want to hit that first. I want to hit the possible changes first before we dive into the rankings. And let's talk about who needs QBs. And right now, I'm going to go in order of where they're picking in the first round of the NFL draft because I think there's not really an appropriate order to go through team needs. But Houston at 2, DeMeco Ryan seems like they just hired DeMeco Ryans. It seems like they can get their pick of the litter here. They could trade up one spot with the Bears. There's other rumors of other teams trying to trade up with the Bears, but they're going to get a quarterback. It seems like they kind of have to suss through and see who they like, but they're going to get one. Indy picks at 4. They just hired Shane Steichen, the Eagles offensive coordinator. There's a bunch of Levis rumors. I just don't. How can we say that they're already in love with Will Levis when they just hired their head coach 3 days ago? Maybe it's true. I'm not sure. But obviously, Matt Ryan is not going to work. Sam Ehlinger ain't going to work. They got to do something. Seattle picks at 5 and 20. Geno is an unrestricted free agent, assuming he resigns. But lots of teams need a quarterback. Maybe someone's going to offer to pay him more. Maybe he doesn't want to be there. I don't know. It seems like he's going back to Seattle, though. But, they're in the boat right now. The Raiders just cut Derek Carr. They picked number 7 overall. I don't think they have a QB on the roster right now. So something has to happen for them. Atlanta, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say Stidham. Is Stidham under contract with them?
I think Stidham's a UFA.
He is a free agent also. Wow.
Or he's an RFA. He's a UFA or an RFA. Either way, he is a free agent. So, and I don't, are you handing the keys to an NFL franchise to Jarrett Stidham? No. Even though he did look good in his couple starts there, I'm not doing it. Atlanta at number 8. Is Ritter taking over? Are they bringing a UFA? Lamar Jackson rumors. That's a big question. Carolina's picking at 9. Matt Corral is the only QB on the roster. They could bring back Sam Darnold, but Frank Reich is there. Probably something new happening. I got Tennessee on this list, Pat. They pick at number 11. Is Tannehill washed? If so, is Malik Willis ready? They put Josh Dobbs in there a week after he signed. So it seems like Malik was at least not ready at the end of last year. Is he going to make that jump this year? The Jets at 13, Mike White, Zach Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy G. Who are the options realistically to start for this team? I got Washington at number 16. Are we really giving the keys to the franchise to Sam Howell? I think that's a big ask at this point. He's only had the one start. Looked fine, but I don't know that I want to give him the keys to a franchise as well. Tampa Bay picking at 19. The GOAT retired. Is it Blaine Gabbert? Kyle Trask, I think, is the only QB on this roster. Sign a UFA, trade up in the draft. They got to do something. Baltimore at 22. Are we franchising Lamar? Everyone knows that is probably going to be it because they are so far apart in the guaranteed money. I don't blame him for wanting the guaranteed money either. He's already won an MVP. His team has gone deeper in the playoffs than Deshaun Watson's teams ever has, and he doesn't have the off-field baggage. So he should be the guy that's getting the most guaranteed money, not Deshaun Watson. So I understand him holding out. The Giants franchise Daniel Jones, right? They have to, I think. But if they decide not to, they need a QB. And then New Orleans. Winston is still on the roster. They're in cap hell. Are they trying to cut him? They tried to do this deal for Carr that fell through. I don't know if they can afford to re-sign Andy Dalton, which is crazy to say about Andy Dalton, but they're $60 million in the hole to start the year. So Fitzy, there is a lot of moving pieces in the QB market here. It makes these guys a little tougher to rank, but obviously things are going to move post free agency, post the draft. So we'll tell you where we have our QBs as of right now, but there is going to be a lot of movement within the QBs, this year, and we're going to get a bunch of guys drafted.
Yes, Boggs, you just rattled off 13 teams for which the resolution of their quarterback situation is going to be the offseason headline. If you play in a division with the word South in the name and are not the Jacksonville Jaguars, you have some sort of troubling quarterback issue. So, like you said, a lot of moving pieces. Maybe only 5 quarterbacks who could be potential answers. I tend to think 4 on that. We can talk more about that a little later. So yeah, man. And Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, I mean, like if he is on the move somewhere, that's going to be
it's huge.
Yeah, an earth moving bit of NFL news the day
because you change your whole
teams.
offense too. If he goes and look, the biggest rumor right now would be going to Atlanta, right? So if you're Baltimore, do you get Ritter back? Do you even want Ritter at that point? I mean, are you just using this pick that the Falcons have at a number 8 to take a quarterback? You trying to move up to get a specific one in the draft? I didn't even mention Justen Fields, because I don't necessarily buy the rumors that, Jason LaCanfora yesterday came out and said that there are people within the NFL that are just sure that that he's getting moved. And I mean, really, like if you're going to move Justen Fields, if you're the Bears, you're sitting at 1 and there's someone that you fall in love with a quarterback. Number one, that can't have happened by now, right? I don't think you see video. I don't think you fall in love with a QB until you get to interview them one-on-one at the NFL Combine, right? That's my just personal opinion. Unless they're a surefire Trevor Lawrence, Andrew Luck type of guy, you're not falling in love with anyone until you get to sit down and talk with them, in my opinion. So I don't think that's happened yet for anybody. But are you trading Justen Fields? And, this isn't even on here. Like some of these are a little bit eye rolling. You could say maybe Baltimore, yes, they're going to franchise. Danny Dimes franchise. Geno seems to really fit with Seattle. But until they've signed on the dotted line and things are, franchise tagged or traded or whatever, these situations are up in the air. And, we didn't even mention Fields and a couple of these other guys. So there's a lot of moving pieces, Fitzy. Lots of moving pieces with the QBs.
Yeah, and it's interesting with the Bears. They have this situation where they have far more money to spend in free agency than any other team, like almost $100 million. And like the next closest.
The next highest is 56 mil.
Falcons, yeah, with 56. So just a boatload of money to spend. You've got the quarterback under a rookie deal, which is sort of the ideal situation for team building. You've got this number 1 pick that you could flip for all these other picks. But what if Ryan Poles and the rest of the Bears front office do fall in love with Bryce Young and decide that?
But you have to announce from the rooftops if you're trading Justen Fields before free agency to make it a bidding war, in my opinion. Because free agency starts, I believe, March 15th. So if you are going to trade Justen Fields, you want as many unsettled QB rooms as possible to drive up this price on acquiring Justen Fields.
It is. Opinion. I mean, it's almost the perfect storm for the Bears if they do want to make a trade, because they've got a QB needy team at number 2. Mm-hmm. So anyone who wants to jump Houston to come up and get the pick of the litter at quarterback,
2, 4,
they can do
5,
that.
7, 8, 9.
Yeah, I mean, the Bears could conceivably trade down with the Texans, extort them and say, hey, if you don't make this deal with us, we're going to trade him to someone else who's going to jump you and take Bryce Young, and then make a deal with the Colts, who are at number 4 and could conceivably be jumped to for someone looking for CJ Stroud or Will Levis or whoever they might be interested in. So interesting situation for the Bears. And yeah, we talked about the Lamar thing. That's really fascinating. That's going to be huge. Yeah, so much movement, I think, in store for us, and probably some shockers ahead, I would think.
Absolutely. Something weird is going to happen for sure.
One of these teams stood out. The Buccaneers, because what do you do if you're the Buccaneers, where you have this really good defense in place, like a lot of veteran, like a good veteran defense. You've got a pretty good offensive line. You've got 2 excellent receivers. Like, this team is built to win now, except they are just nowhere at quarterback.
Yeah, I mean they're the definition of a QB away. Washington has been like this for years. We saw Minnesota was like this for a long time before getting Kirk Cousins. That's why everyone was like, "You're paying Kirk Cousins this much money?" Yeah, because what's your alternative? Your alternative is to have someone to keep the merry-go-round going and keep trying these QBs and have it be unstable. It's a tough spot to be in. Ask the Browns. Obviously, they know they've been in that spot for a while. Why do you think they went out and got a guy like Deshaun Watson with all of his off-field stuff? It's because they've been mired in this for years and years without a franchise QB. So the Jets have been like that for a long time. It's just it's a tough spot to be in. So you don't want to be playing the merry-go-round. And we're also, the torch is being passed right now from Brady and Phillip Rivers and Roethlisberger and Drew Brees and all of these classic guys. Peyton Manning was in there. Eli Manning was a rock for a long time. All these guys that were the leads of franchises for a decade plus are out of the league, and now we're going to the younger crop. So it's a transition period for the NFL in terms of this position and for a third of the teams, at least from what we just saw. So let's go ahead and dive in, Pat, and talk about our QB dynasty rankings here. And I kind of broke this into tiers. They're not real, like we're not setting our tiers, but we have the same 8 QBs in the top 8. And I think that is a tier in itself. I've got 9 to 21 as a tier, and then we have the tier below those guys. So let's just start, Pat. Give us your 1 down to 8 in terms of dynasty QB rankings.
All right. So number 1, it's Josh Allen. Number 2, Patrick Mahomes. Number 3, Jalen Hurts. And I think you could make a decent case for putting Hurts at number 2 or maybe even number 1. Joe Burrow at number 4. Justen Fields at number 5, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, and Lamar Jackson.
For me, I've got Josh Allen at 1. I have Mahomes at 2, Jalen Hurts at 3. So we have the same top 3. I have Lamar at 4. I have Joe Burrow at 5, Justin Fields at 6, Trevor Lawrence at 7, and Justin Herbert at number 8. So the same 8 and really the same top 3. Would you consider those top 3 maybe their own tier potentially?
Kind of a sub-tier of the truly elite. I mean, you could almost argue that Burrow belongs in that strata too. And we can talk more about Lamar and whether he belongs there, where he belongs, since we seem to disagree a little bit on him.
Yeah, I mean, Lamar is forever going to be near the top of my board until he, unless he misses multiple games again this year. And because the old scouting trope of availability is the best ability, there's some truth to that. It's kind of a little tongue in cheek, but you got to be on the field to produce us points for fantasy. So it's obviously an enormous part of it. But I go back to, his MVP days, his days in college where he put up, I'm a college fantasy guy, as, Thor and I talked a little bit about last week. He put up, just in the history of college football, the number 1 and number 2 seasons in college football fantasy history. Barry Sanders was third behind him in his 28 touchdown season at Oklahoma State in the 80s. So, just a high-end potential for an offense that maybe would open it up a little bit more for him and let him throw downfield or give him some good wide receivers to play with, because I know the thought process has been, well, these wide receivers aren't good because Lamar isn't throwing to them. Well, Mark Andrews is one of the best tight ends in the league because Lamar throws him the football. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I think they restrict him a little bit more than they have to. I think he can throw the ball downfield. And if he ends up in Atlanta, he's going to run, obviously, because that's what they want to do there. So I'm going to stick him in that group just because, look, I like Burrow too. I have Burrow at 5. I'm not, off of him or anything. But for me, it's the guys that do it with the wheels at the top. Mahomes, not necessarily the wheels, but moving around, buying himself extra time. You're not getting the stats from him moving, in rush yards, but you are getting them through the air because he just makes things happen. And then I have Burrow at 5. But yeah, I mean, the top of the group is great. These guys are no doubt studs that you want to have. If you're in a super flex league and you get 2 of these guys, I mean, just lock it up for yourself. I think you're in a position better than anyone else. So yeah, I'm still going to be high in on Lamar. What makes Lamar drop down to 8 for you? And should he even be in this tier for you? Am I assuming too much?
No, I think he is in this tier.
Okay.
I agree with you on that. And I was debating where to put him amongst Justin Herbert and Trevor Lawrence. Those three are kind of grouped together for me. I think they're kind of a cut below the top five. So he, in 2019, had an average of 28.1 fantasy points per game, 36 touchdown passes. Like, his touchdown rate was sky high. I think he threw a touchdown pass on like 9.1% of his throws that year, which is just crazy. Still only had 3,100 passing yards that season, which to date is still a career high. But, you know, he did the Lamar thing. He's probably the greatest running quarterback we've ever seen. Had 1,200 yards that season, 7 rushing touchdowns. I think if you get a full season from Lamar, at least for another year or two, Boggs, you're going to get 1,200 yards and at least half a dozen touchdowns. It's just what he does. He's great at it. And I do wonder, though, if at some point 2 or 3 years from now, we're wondering, is it good for a guy at this age to be running this much? And, you know, ever since that 2019 season where he averaged 28.1 fantasy points per game, Boggs, since then, in 2020, he averaged 22.8, then 21.1, and then last year, 20.3. So he's sort of sliding the wrong way here. I don't think he gets below 20, probably, if he's healthy and you know, in a decent situation, but I don't think he's going to be the 28 point per game fantasy quarterback ever again.
And look, that's fair. It's a fair assessment. I hope that, and this should be everyone's hope, that by the time he gets a little older and is taking some of those hits, he's better at passing the ball downfield. He's more accurate. He's more comfortable in the pocket, things like that. And can he get there? Yes. Will he get there? That's a big question, which, you know, I don't have a big argument against what you just said. You know, my only argument is as a running quarterback, he takes fewer hits because he will get out of bounds more often. So, but, you know, you lose a step and now instead of getting out of bounds, you're taking a bigger hit on the sideline, you know, so there's obviously the possibility of that as well. Justen Fields, I think, was the hardest guy for me to rank here. And you have him one spot ahead of me as a Bears hater, which surprised me a little bit. But look, you can see the high end potential here. And this is a guy that should be better at passing the ball than a dude like Lamar. He obviously, you know, set the single season rushing record for a quarterback this year. He's an outstanding athlete, but we've seen half a season of the high end potential. And what we saw the first half of this year was making me question whether he was an NFL level QB. Those first 3 or 4 weeks, were maybe some of the ugliest QB play I've ever seen for a guy that kept his job. So you have two extremes from last year, obviously more of the good side, which is fantastic, which is why I have him in this tier, you know, which is why he would be an enormous trade commodity should the Bears decide to go ahead and, you know, move him and take someone else. Was he the hardest guy to rank for you, or do you just see the upside and say, hey, this has got to be a top 5, top 6 QB here?
Well, I'm not just a Chicago Bears hater, Boggs. I'm an Ohio State University hater since I'm a Big Ten guy. Whammy. So, yeah, and I guess that is why I'm pretty sold on Justin Fields, because I saw the passing upside when he was with the Buckeyes. Mm-hmm. Like, he is a good passer, or I think at least he was a good college passer, and I think he can be, at minimum, an adequate NFL passer. And yes, it was pretty ugly at times last season, especially early in the season. I mean, Boggs, he only had his second highest passing yardage game was 208 yards. He had a 254-yard game, a 208-yard game, and everything else was under 200, I believe. Oof. So, but then again, poor offensive line. Once Darnell Mooney got hurt, that was the worst wide receiver room in the league. It was Dante Pettis and Equanimous St. Brown and Byron Pringle. I mean, it was just horrendous. So give this guy some weapons. Like, give this guy Quentin Johnston and a healthy Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet and Chase Claypool, and let's see what he can do. You know?
Yeah.
So let me ask you about Herbert, Boggs.
Okay.
Justin Herbert. Like last year, a lot of people had him ranked ahead of Joe Burrow, which I kind of thought was a mistake, but I understood it. Like Herbert has all the tools in the kit, great arm, mobility, great head of hair. We've talked about this before. Like he is, a pretty good starter kit for a franchise quarterback, but then last year was kind of disappointing, to be honest with you. And I know, granted, he had that Thursday night game against the Chiefs where he had the fractured rib cartilage. And
that was tough to watch.
Oh man, totally gutted it out through that game. And he couldn't have been right for 3 or 4 weeks after that. So giving him a little bit of a mulligan on that, no question. But do you think at this point, Justin Herbert is potentially great, very, very good, or merely above average?
I think he's very, very good. I think the thing that was most disappointing to me, that has been most disappointing to me for Justin Herbert is I'm going to lump Trevor Lawrence in here too, is that they don't design more runs for these guys. And I know, this is the key to the franchise. You don't want them running, like Jalen Hurts does 14, 15 times the game. I think he had 17 rushes in the Super Bowl or whatever it was. You don't want your franchise guy running that many times, but Herbert's legs are what won him games at Oregon. So Trevor Lawrence rushed for more yards in college than Justen Fields did. So I know you get to this level, you don't want these guys getting hurt. You don't want them taking those big hits and everything, but this is a weapon. It's a tool in the tool bag for these guys. And I think Herbert had fewer than 200 rushing yards this year. I believe it was 145 or something, somewhere in that range. Actually, let me pull it up. I think I have it here. 147 yards and no touchdowns. He had 302 and 3 touchdowns last year. Obviously, Austin Eckler getting a lot of those touchdowns. He's a touchdown machine right now. But I'm a little disappointed by that. But I mean, there is nothing that Herbert cannot do on the field. Everything that you see these other guys doing, he can do it. He can manipulate the pocket, give himself time. He can run, and he's got a bigger arm than anyone. I mean, he throws rainbows out there. So I think he's an elite level talent that you got to let the reins off a little bit. I know he's a young player and all that stuff. But in terms of PFF's turnover worthy plays of this group, he had the lowest turnover worthy play percentage. I think it was 1.7%. Not huge on the big time throws, but that's in the bag. He can make those. So I think there's still meat on the bone in terms of Justin Herbert's production, which is why I would have him in here. Are they going to let the reins up? Are they going to let it happen for him? I guess would be my question with him right now.
Fair assessment. And I personally think Herbert and Lawrence sort of run the right amount, like that opportunistic rushing. Mm-hmm. And, granted, if it's in a big game, run more aggressively, do what you need to do to win us the game. But I totally know what you mean, though, because in his last college game, he beat my Wisconsin Badgers with the Oregon Ducks. And in that game, he was not making really anything happen through the air, but he absolutely
run for 250 yards that game or something stupid.
It was something probably close to 200 yards. I don't know if he was over it, but he had some big runs that absolutely won that game for Oregon.
Yeah, that Rose Bowl, I remember that, and that was such a crazy game. 167 yard. Let me see.
2 touchdowns, I think, right?
I had it pulled up, but I do not. So, I mean, he ran all over Wisconsin. I remember that game, but 3 touchdowns total, I believe, and I think they were all rushing. Just a crazy game for him. You can see that stuff happening for him. Is it I guess if you had to drop one of these guys off this list, who would it definitely be? Lamar, because of the potential for injury because he runs so much? Would it be Fields because of the bad passing? Who if you're picking one to fall flat on their face from this elite QB tier, who would it be?
I guess it would be Lamar just because of the crossroads he is at right now and the ambiguity. Like I don't want this to be seen as me being anti-Lamar because
well, I asked you the question. So
yeah, and I imagine myself having him in some redraft leagues next year. I don't currently have him on any of my dynasty teams, but I don't know. Maybe this is the time to buy in if there's some uncertainty. I just think Herbert and Lawrence they're sort of what you want as far as like the arm talent and like the size and like these classic pocket passers, but with that added mobility. Like I think these guys are almost the prototype of what you're looking for. And now they're both sort of entering the prime of their careers. So I don't think it would be one of those guys sliding out there. And Lamar, I think, is more, crossroads, I think, as a running quarterback who's now starting to get a little bit older. Like I'm not saying we're going to see any drop off from him in terms of running ability anytime soon. But, once a quarterback hits 30, that is a hard way to, it's a tough business model, Boggs. Yes.
Yeah. I understand that. But I mean, also, you would not be shocked if Lamar was the number one scorer in fantasy this year. Like that's just how he's built.
Yep.
And that's why we have this top tier, because we can see any of these guys 1 through 8 being first in this tier or last in this tier. So it's not surprising. Let's go to the next tier. But before we do, would you like to go back in time? Are you bored right now with no fantasy football going on? Well, go play our perfect draft challenge over at fantasypros.com/perfect draft and find out about it. It is so much fun. With our perfect draft challenge, you can go back in time, draft against our simulated opponents, and try to nail the perfect fantasy football draft for the 2022 season. Invite your friends to compete on our community leaderboards to see how you stack up. For this year's challenge, we're giving away a 5-year subscription to Fantasy Pros. All you have to do to enter is score at least 2,500 points, share your score on Twitter or Instagram, and fill out the prize form at fantasypros.com/perfect draft for your chance to win. 9 runners up will win a 1-year subscription. The contest ends on the night of March 15th. So come and conquer the challenge today at fantasypros.com/perfect draft. We have the next tier. I have it set 9 through 21 here. So this is kind of the second tier. These are starters. If you're in a super flex, to me, you have to have one of those guys from the top tier. You want a top 8 guy, and then one of the guys from this tier. I prefer to have 3 guys out of both these tiers, just so I know I have a backup that is good as well. Should an injury crop up, should bye weeks hit me extra hard or whatever, I want 3 guys between both of these tiers, preferably 2 in the top tier, but that's difficult as, you're going to have 10 to 12 teams to 16 teams in your league. It's hard to get 2 of those top 8. But Fitzy, let's hear your 9 through 21.
All right. So 9 is Kyler Murray, then Bryce Young, Deshaun Watson, CJ Stroud. So that takes us 9 through 12, the quarterback ones for Dynasty. And then the quarterback 2s, starting at 13, Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones, Tua Tagovailoa, Trey Lance, Jared Goff, Anthony Richardson, Kirk Cousins, Will Levis, Kenny Pickett.
For me at 9, I've got Danny Dimes. At 10, I've got Kyler. 11, I got Trey Lance. 12 is Bryce Young. 13 is CJ Stroud. 14, Dak. 15, Kirk Cousins. 16, Deshaun Watson. 17, Kenny Pickett. 18, Tua Tagovailoa. 19, Jared Goff. 20, Will Levis. And 21, Anthony Richardson. So mainly the same names in here. I'm a little higher on some guys. You're a little higher on some guys, but where should we start? Who do you want? I know there's a guy you want to ask me about in particular. So do you want to start there?
Let's have an appetizer with Daniel Jones.
Okay.
I think the main course is coming, but for me, Boggs, like I'm still, what we saw this year, really encouraging. Good leader. I mean, 3 years into the league, we knew this guy is a mistake-prone turnover machine, basically. And the marriage with Brian Dable seemed to go very well. Led the league in lowest interception rate, 1.1. Who would have imagined Daniel Jones being the most turnover-averse quarterback in the league? That's pretty bizarre. So really good on that end, and we know he, runs. I've heard the nickname Vanilla Vic The dude is a good runner, but I don't know about him as a passer yet, Boggs. Like, I don't know what the ceiling is here because his career YPA, yards per attempt, is 6.7 yards. And even this past year, in what was a very good year for him as a passer, or at least by the standards of what we had seen before, 6.8 yards per attempt. And in his defense, we just talked about the Bears having a horrible wide receiver room. The Giants, not a lot better with, Richie James, Isaiah Hodgins, Darius Slayton by the end of the season. So a little messy there. Maybe if we get him a couple of big time playmakers, we see better passing numbers, but 15 touchdown passes in 16 games, only averaged about 200 passing yards per game. I just don't know what the passing upside is.
And look, this is a fair argument against Danny Dimes. My thing is exactly what you said about Justen Fields. Let's get him some guys that can catch the ball because he's got it nowhere. I mean, at least Fields had Mooney for a little bit. At least he had Cole Kmet for the season. Daniel Bellinger, the rookie, was one of the best wide receivers or best receiving targets on this team, which is just crazy. I mean, we saw Isaiah Hodgins take a big step up. Darius Slayton made some big plays, but we're not talking about Pro Bowl level players here at any level for him. The only Pro Bowl level player that he has with him in this offense is Saquon, and he ran off of that. He used that to his advantage. Brian Daboll knew what was happening with this roster, the way it was constructed, and the ADOT is bad. The average depth of target is bad for him. It's very low. But we have no one that can get open deep for him. They tried to solve that problem with Kenny Golladay, spent way too much money on him, and he kind of took his money and ran. I mean, I know that block in the game against Minnesota, everyone's saying he earned all of his money right there because he didn't earn it anywhere else. So he's a guy that's been without targets and has made the most of it. And the thing I like the most about Daniel Jones is you see incremental improvements every year from him, and giving him a guy like Brian Daboll, I think is just such a great move for the Giants. And, I expect Danny Dimes back. I expect him to be franchised. I don't know if Saquon's going to be there next year. So they're probably going to lean even more on Daniel Jones. That should also give him more opportunities to get in the end zone in terms of rushing touchdowns as well if Saquon isn't there. I hope they find a way to bring both of them back and add some wide receivers because I think that makes the raising tide rises all ships, right? That's kind of the deal there. You want the good players surrounded by him, but I think there's more meat on the bone, and the dude is an incredibly hard worker, and he's willing to throw the ball downfield. That's what I saw watching him at Duke. That was kind of the difference. That QB class was insanely weak. It was him and Dwayne Haskins were the two guys, and I did not like Haskins coming out of Ohio State because he refused to throw the ball downfield with confidence. He would do it every once in a while, but his wide receivers had to be college open. I think Dimes will throw it downfield more if he has a target that can go downfield and catch it. He just hasn't had that yet, and he's been hampered by some bad offenses. And I just think there's still meat on the bone for him. And I'm not particularly impressed with this list of names in the second tier. There are obviously very good quarterbacks here, but this is a worse list than it's been in a while, at least in terms of confidence, maybe not in skill. We've seen Kirk Cousins is kind of capped. I think Dak is on the back end of his career. We have him in here. Deshaun Watson is a gigantic question mark. Tyler is hurt. Stroud and Young haven't played a snap yet. Jared Goff has been terrible, over his NFL career outside of a couple seasons. So this second tier is not fantastic. It is not a great group. It's a good group. But I wouldn't call it great by any stretch, right?
Yeah, and Kyler's an interesting one because I think he would have been considered a franchise 100%. Dynasty quarterback, especially in super flex leagues earlier. But, the injury,
and Kingsbury leaving.
Kingsbury, not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but like Kyler
for offense.
Yes, and some of the friction we saw between Kyler and teammates and Kingsbury at the end, it kind of makes you wonder about Kyler as a leader and whether he's, the guy they envision, the franchise quarterback they envision him to be. But I will say this in Kyler's defense, Boggs, and I've had him on dynasty teams and redraft teams. I still have him on my most important dynasty superflex team. He can pile up points in a hurry, man. When he is right. And people who rostered Kyler Murray in 2022 will know exactly what I'm talking about. There were a lot of games where he would have like 4 or 5 points at halftime, and you'd be looking at the score, watching the game and being like, man, Kyler's just having a terrible game. And then all of a sudden he winds up with 22 or 23 points, like just goes nuclear in the second half. That dude can pile up points in a hurry with his combination of, arm, legs, willingness to heave the deep ball, kind of the total package. But boy, there's just kind of 26. A lot. And only 26, just a lot going on with him right now.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think not only would he be above Daniel Jones for me if he wasn't hurt, he would be in that upper tier of QBs. And yes, I don't like the attitude stuff, the Call of Duty stuff, all of that. Immaturity overall is what it kind of seems like with Kyler. But guys can grow out of that. And usually guys that, are in a situation where you've played bad enough for your head coach to be fired. And this is the guy that went out on a limb for him too, that said that, remember they had just drafted Josh Rosen as their number 1 QB the year before. Then Kingsbury comes in, they ship Rosen out, which apparently was the right move because Rosen has done nothing in the NFL since. And Kyler has been an outstanding player. I worry about the knee. I think he's going to miss the entire season. I don't think wow. By the time we get to where he can play, you want to play him if you're the Cardinals, right? Because they're going to be bad and they're probably going to be tanking. So, you talk about the free agents they have and just looking at this overall roster, it's rough. It's not a good roster, specifically on defense. It's bad. For fantasy, that's what we want. We want a good quarterback on a team with a crappy defense because he's going to have to go point for point with the other teams. But how much is he going to run after this knee injury? This is a massive knee injury that he has. How much is he going to continue to run? And how much is Gannon, the new coach coming in, who's a defensive-minded coach, going to downshift from this high-flying offense to a run-based, run the ball and play defense type of a team. So, because right now your personnel is so bad on the defensive side, you get to start from scratch and build it how you want it. Kind of the same thing on offense. They talked about trading DeAndre Hopkins already. They've already made him mad. So it's like death by 1,000 cuts here for Kyler, which is why I don't have him in here and why I'm not as positive on his outlook as I am the other top 8 guys. Even when he comes back, extremely talented, but lots of question marks surrounding him right now.
Boggs, Deshaun Watson. Let's talk about him for a second real quick. I mean, I guess the question we have to ask is whether it was just rust that he had this bad season because, I mean, he turns 28 in September, so still, prime of the career, you would say. In his 3 full seasons as a starter with the Texans, top 5 in fantasy scoring at quarterback every year. And that was on the heels of that partial rookie season where he was just spectacular for 6 games or 7 games. I don't know if he ever gets back into the top 5, but I think he is better than he showed last year. Like his YPA for his career, 8.2. Last year was 6.5. Career completion percentage, 67%. Last year, 58.2. So he was way off. And it kind of makes me think that it's just hard for a quarterback to be away from that long and come back and be anything close to what you were. I think he's going to be a better player this year now that he's just back in the groove of being a professional football player.
Yeah, and look, we have said on this show, and I've said it in my stages as well, which, by the way, if you guys want to check out the stages, I do them at 5 p.m. Eastern every single Friday, and Pat Fitzmaurice is going to be jumping on those with me pretty soon here. He'll be on this week. The following week, we're going to have Thor for a community mock, and then back to Fitz being on with me. Those are going to be a lot of fun, so please go and check those out over at the Fantasy Pros Discord. You can jump on and ask us questions, but we're not the moral police, in terms of off the field stuff. But I have I think when you're ranking for Dynasty and for a keeper league that's going to be over a couple of years, you have to take that into some sort of account. It's hard to measure that type of stuff, but I don't think we're done with accusations with this guy. We haven't been. So there are potential things with that, plus the rust we saw, plus the fact that he's playing in a cold weather environment when he went to Clemson and Houston, and he was a warm weather guy before that. I don't know how much that has to will impact him, but I know offenses are more built around the run when you play in cold weather for the most part, not always, but in the AFC North, you see the Steelers, you see the Ravens, the Bengals, another cold weather team, are putting together a great high flying offense, of course. But I don't know how much of it was rust and how much was it he's lost a step. And, obviously things being equal, he was great in the Houston system. How great is he going to be in Cleveland? The targets aren't there for him either. I mean, Amari Cooper was solid. Njoku is good, but they love him blocking. DPJ, probably more of a 3 than a 2. They got to add some pieces here for me to be completely confident in him. I'm just not sure how much of it was rust. So I don't know. To me, just overall, Deshaun Watson is an avoid. And you can take that however you want. You can try to trade him or trade for him. And, look, there's meat on the bone if you trade for him now. This is the time to trade for him has passed, because it was last year, right, when he was doing nothing and you could get him for very, very cheap. Now you got to pay a little bit more, especially with this second tier of QBs not being as good as it probably should be, at least in my eyes. There's a ton of potential for him, a lot of meat on the bone. We've seen it happen. I just don't know if it ever comes back. So,
it's interesting, Boggs. You have Watson QB 16. I have him QB 11. You have Trey Lance QB 11. I have Trey Lance QB 16. And let's talk about him, because such a wide range of outcomes for this dude's career at this point. And 2 years from now, I feel like we could look back on the Trey Lance trades that were consummated this offseason and think, wow, what a stroke of genius to trade for that guy at just the right time at a reasonable price before his career took off. Or we could look back on this year's, what a blessing that, well, I mean, if it turns out that Trey Lance has a great career, like this Brock Purdy thing is just like the perfect smokescreen for you to step in and steal him. But also 2 years from now, we could be saying, the Trey Lance trade. I can't believe someone gave up so much for that guy.
Absolutely. And that's what makes, I think Trey Lance is the hardest player to rank in terms of the QBs right now, because you don't know. He came from a small school. They traded 3 first-round picks to get him. They invested all of this stuff in him. And then Jimmy G beats him out, plays way better than him. He had a couple starts last year, didn't look particularly great. And then finally, 2022 is the time. It's go time for him. He plays a game and a quarter, breaks his ankle, done for the year. So the reason I have Trey Lance this high at 11 is there is just so much potential for him. And if a guy like Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, who everybody missed on, right? Like I'm not trying to sit here and tear down Brock Purdy. He was way better than we initially thought. Anyone who was evaluating the draft missed on this guy because he went out there in 6 games and proved it. He is a decent quarterback. He can be an NFL starter if you have the weapons around him. We're talking Christian McCaffrey. We're talking Kittle, Ayuk, Debo. Like they have so much around him that even a guy that is either average to slightly above average in terms of his physical tools can put together a great run, an undefeated run until the playoffs, right? And can produce this with points. Brock Purdy was great. Imagine all of that with a guy with a much better arm who is much, much faster than Purdy in this offense with CMC, Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle. It makes me drool. I mean, this is what Shanahan envisioned right, is a great quarterback surrounded by all these weapons. I just think if he comes in and he's league average, we have what Brock Purdy was. So that's a floor. And if he's much better than that, like we kind of expect him to be now with, years of seasoning and sitting with the clipboard and learning about the nuance of the position and the game and the level that he's playing at now, I think he steps in here. Brock Purdy is not going to challenge him. He is not going to be ready by the time OTAs are coming around. I don't think he's going to be ready for training camp, and I question whether he'll be ready for preseason. So if all Trey Lance has to do is not look god awful by the time Brock Purdy comes back, and Trey Lance will have the leg up. They've invested all of the time on him and the picks too. I think he's the guy, and I think the upside is unbelievable here, which is why I got to have him as a QB1 in the top 12.
Yeah, definitely there is vast upside. I think I just worry that maybe Kyle Shanahan is going to put his thumb on the scale for Purdy just because they have maybe the best collection of skill position talent in the league with McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle. Do they need an Allen Iverson point guard? Which I feel like that's what Trey Lance is, or do they want, a Terry Porter, going old school with the, University of Wisconsin. Anyway, yeah, so like maybe they just want a distributor and they see Purdy being that. Let me ask you this, Bog. So let's drill down.
My
on this
question
just
is,
a
why
little
take
bit.
Terry Porter when you can have Allen Iverson?
Exactly. I mean, there's no question who's better, but like, do you want
Right.
the guy? Do you need the guy who's shoot first? So
I understand.
based on the Fantasy Pros Dynasty trade value chart, Boggs, let me throw out a couple of potential deals involving Trey Lance that
Ooh, I like
things
this.
on the other side with commensurate value.
Okay.
Would you rather have Trey Lance or the 107 in this year's rookie draft? Where you could probably get at least one of Will Levis or Anthony Richardson.
This is super flex, or this is okay.
Super flex.
I want Lance.
Yeah, I guess you have Lance ranked ahead of Levis and Richardson, so that should answer that question. Trey Lance or Tony Pollard?
Ooh, that's a good one. One QB league, I want Pollard. Super flex, I want
For sure.
Lance. Yeah.
Okay, fair. Last one, and this is super flex also, we'll assume. Okay. Trey Lance or Christian Watson?
Trey Lance.
Yeah.
That one's not close to me because, I think he's going to end up starting. There's only 32 starters in the league. There's way more starting wide receivers. You're on that offense. I mean, that one's not even close to me. The others are a little dicier. And look, Will Levis and Bryce Young, if they land in completely crazy spots for whatever reason, someone trades up for them and they end up in a amazing spot, then they could be higher than Trey Lance for me. So there is that potential and possibility, but I just doubt it because the Niners have such great weapons. I'm going to be still high on Trey Lance because I think he ends up with the job on a team where you could take a league average QB and they could be outstanding, which is kind of what I think Brock Purdy is probably a league average guy. There's meat on the bone. He could be much better than that. But I think that's probably where he'll end up. And he was great. So I think a guy with better tools could obviously be better. It's tough to rank the rookies here, Fitz, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on them, but was it difficult? Was it kind of easy? I mean, you do have Richardson ahead of Will Levis. Any reasoning behind that right now? Is it just that upside, the rushing upside like Fields?
That is subject to change based on the combine and landing spots for sure. I see both as being sort of the same guys, super toolsy, rocket arms, good mobility, good size. I feel like maybe the ceiling is just a little bit higher with Richardson, but it's interesting that these guys, as far as the pure tools, like maybe are better than the first two guys as far as what the upside could be.
Yes.
Bryce Young is small. CJ Stroud is not very mobile, but like
they're much better. They have the stats to back up there.
And they are like, they have everything you want or what these offensive coordinators and head coaches are going to want as far as ability to read the field, run an offense, throw with anticipation, throw with touch. Like, these guys are NFL caliber passers. No,
they've got it between the years.
Oh yeah,
we know that. We questioned the mistakes that Levis and Richardson have made on the field on tape. Make you question whether they have it.
Yeah, so Young and Stroud, less physically gifted than Levis and Richardson, but man, these guys have their act together as passers. Like, they can run an offense.
I'm with you, and I think that also gives him an advantage in terms of a fantasy ranking, because I mean, if we're looking at pure ceiling, it's Richardson, not close. Like Thor said last week, with a bullet, it'd be Richardson in terms of ceiling, of course, but how long does it take him to get on the field? Does it take him just one season? Is it half a season? Is it 2 seasons? How long until they get him on the field? Now, most first-round QBs get on the field in year 1. We know that just historically. But this guy could take some seasoning. And it depends on where these guys go. There's a big difference. I think Stroud and Young end up in a place where they start from day 1. Yep. I'm not sure on Levis or Richardson. If they slip, they may start from day 1. I don't know if I want them starting from day 1 either. So there's a potential for these guys to come into a situation, be rushed, and then end up like a Marcus Mariota and Mitch Trubisky, you know what I mean, with all this physical talent, but they let you down pretty quickly. The last guy in this section I want to ask you about before we move on here is Tua Tagovailoa. How difficult was it to rank him here? You got him a little higher than I do. I think you've got him at 15. I have him at 18. I mean, I think his career might be cut short. It's too many concussions. I know he's working with, I believe it's a martial arts expert to learn how to fall to avoid a head injury, which is kind of crazy to me. That he has to do that in his career. But this guy has, to me, proven that he can't really protect himself out there, which makes him hard to rank. But over 20 points per game last year. He's got all these weapons. He's extremely accurate. He's a great quarterback. Literally the only question we have with him is how long is he going to play, because he has gotten hurt so much.
Exactly. Hard to rank last year because we didn't know what kind of quarterback he was going to be. Now we know, and we liked what we saw, and we really liked the situation with, I think, the play calling of Mike McDaniel and the Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle combination. But one more concussion could potentially end this dude's career. So there's a lot of risk here. A lot of risk.
Oh, man, lots of upside, but lots of risk, which kind of, defines this section. Let's move on and talk about a couple other QBs here. I don't want to give out the rest of the list. I don't know that we have time for that, but any other QB you would like to speak on here, Fitz? What do you got moving down past 21 and beyond?
Yeah, Bugs, Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi. Like, how convinced are you that Mac Jones is the better player than Bailey Zappi?
I still think Mac Jones is the better player. I just don't think Mac Jones is very good. And I don't know that the Patriots are going to ask him to do a lot to win games. I think they want to play off the run. They want to play great defense, and they want Mac Jones to make a play when he has to. And that's kind of it. So I am way less enthusiastic about Mac Jones. I got him at 28. I know you're higher on me. You got him at 23, but I'm not very high on Mac Jones anymore.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, I think the ceiling for Mac Jones is that he would be like a Troy Aikman type game manager. And Troy Aikman, we know, was not a particularly valuable fantasy quarterback way back in the ancient times of fantasy football. At least I can attest to that, Boggs.
I mean, put Mac Jones in San Francisco, and he's a top 15 option because of the weapons they have. But you put him in New England where you don't have any weapons, and he's in the low 20s to me.
Right. So. But I do think Bailey Zappi is kind of good. And I think he's maybe a sneaky trade target if you're looking for quarterback help this offseason in fantasy.
And if you were rostering Mac, I really want to have Bailey just in case. Yeah.
How do you feel about Sam Howell, Boggs?
Oh, man.
Small sample size last year, but I guess
one game, and we're giving him Ron Rivera's already said he's our starter. I don't believe that for a second. You want to talk about coach speak and all that stuff? I don't believe that for one millisecond that, yes, we're for sure giving Sam Howell the starting job. I could see them bringing in Jimmy G. I could see them drafting someone. I just don't believe that, oh, we saw one game of Sam Howell, here we go. I think that's to get this kid's confidence up, to try to make him a leader in the offseason, which he should be, because right now he is the starter. They got nobody else. So, but I don't know, after one game, if you want to hand the keys to the franchise to a guy like Sam Howell, I mean, great. But if I roster him right now, I am trying to trade him for as much as I can possibly get, especially in a super flex, because I would say that him starting week 1 for Washington would be about 50-50 right now.
Yeah. And I guess my sole reason for optimism is that he was very good as the quarterback in a Power 5 conference as like an 18-year-old freshman.
And he runs. He runs a lot too. If he's on the field, I like him. I just don't know if you can just go ahead and say he's our guy, like Ron Rivera has already said. I don't know if I necessarily believe that.
But you would rather have Malik Willis in Dynasty than Sam Howell. All right. I think I'm the opposite way. I was so alarmed by what I saw from Malik Willis as a passer, and then having the Titans go ahead and start Josh Dobbs at the end of the season rather than in a meaningless game, Boggs, rather than give Willis some time. Like, that's just like, are they waving the white flag on this poor guy already?
Yeah, I completely understand that. I think what you saw was Willis was way more of a project than we had initially projected. And, Thor took the L on Malik Willis last year. He had him as his, top, I think a top 5 player in the draft. He obviously didn't go till the 3rd round. Kenny Pickett was the only first round QB. He fell all the way back there. And then when he got on the field, he looked like garbage. But I would say there's a couple things there. Number one, he played at a very small school in Liberty, a G5 school, where he didn't play against the best, opponents. They definitely weren't NFL caliber, as we know. The passing, I think, is going to improve. It can't get much worse, obviously. And I'm not sold on Ryan Tannehill. I'm not sold on this receiving core. The whole offense kind of collapsed when all you have is Derrick Henry, stack 9 in the box and rush the quarterback and rush, Derrick Henry. That's what they did. Malik wasn't ready. I think with a full off season, he's going to get much better. He has the physical tools. He's a hard worker, and I will not count him out until no one is signing him. So I'm going to be a Malik Willis fan until we see him get a full shot and not succeed. So I just think there's tons of meat on the bone for him to improve. And if he can get on the field with those wheels, he is going to make things happen for fantasy.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that is the upside, that he can be a Konami code quarterback, even if he's not like even a league average passer.
Yeah, I'm a little high on Matt Stafford. Look, Matt Stafford could still win you a year or two if he decides to play a couple seasons. So that's why I have him, like in the top 24 here as a low end QB2. I get him at 23. You're in the 30s. I know that's all about, I look at things in a 3-year window, and I know that's all about, there's a possibility. I mean, he could retire this offseason, wouldn't be shocking. But I think if he's going to play and he still has Cooper Kupp and the line got much better, they kind of figured out the run game with Akers. Al Robinson will be better with a real quarterback in there. I just still think there's a little bit of time for Matt Stafford, so I'm a little higher on him. I think I'm the other guy on the list I was a little higher on, Hendon Hooker. I think this guy obviously has an ACL, not going to get a lot of seasoning. He's a little bit of an older prospect coming out too. I believe he's going to turn 25 midway through the season, somewhere in that range.
He's 25 now. I think he turns 26. So and
which is, by the way, that's how old Kyler Murray is. He's 25. Right. He'll turn 26 before the season starts, which is kind of crazy to think of. Kyler Murray's got 4 seasons under his belt. But Hendon Hooker, he's just smart. And, he throws the open guy and he can run a little bit. Like, there's a lot of like Geno with more upside, I feel like, on a guy like Hendon Hooker. So, if you need a starter, by all means, draft a starter. But if you have a project, Hendon Hooker is the project, or Malik Willis. Those are 2 projects that I would want to buy into right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. You've got 4 quarterbacks who could all be potentially top 10 picks, which wouldn't surprise me at all. Then like Hendon Hooker is maybe the only other guy with even like a shred of hope to be something. Like it's going to be an upset if any of these other guys, Jake Haener or, Aiden O'Connell or any of these dudes, like I could rattle off a lot of guys. They're
DTR. DTR,
man. Like all these guys are like late day 3 picks.
These are all backup QBs, which are important in super flex leagues. You gotta have, you gotta have the backup to your stud. At least if you have Trevor Lawrence, you got to go get, whoever, CJ Beathard it was last year, but you got to roster one of these backups, and I would rather take the guy with the upside like Malik Willis and Hendon Hooker and stuff like that.
Yeah. Hendon Hooker's a fun toolkit for sure, but just like a weird combination of things with the age, the coming off the ACL and is probably going to miss half his rookie year, and like that he's coming from this weird vertical spread offense thing that Tennessee ran that, probably doesn't translate to any sort of NFL system at all.
It definitely doesn't. It's one of those things where, you're great in college when you're throwing to guys that are college open, in air quotes, with a guy without 5, the Jalen Hyatt has no one within 5 yards of him.
Right.
It's easy to pass it to him. But even in a system like that, this dude had 3 picks last year. Was unbelievable. True. His touchdown to turnover ratio. So he's not going to put it in harm's way, which is, going to get you on the field. If you just don't make mistakes, you can be that guy with the low A dot like Daniel Jones and stay on the field as long as you're not screwing up and turning the ball over. If you're getting it to your playmakers, that's a win. That's what Brock Purdy did. He got it to his playmakers and they won. So anybody else on the list?
No, that's about it, Boggs. I mean, this interesting third tier we have here is a lot of guys. You mentioned Stafford, and there are a bunch of other guys like this where they're veterans. You just have to triangulate how many more good years, decent years as starters they can give you.
Years.
Yeah, I mean, Russell Wilson, who obviously now we have to have questions about after the way he played last year. Aaron Rodgers, like if he even comes back, we don't know that for sure. Derek Carr, what does the second act of his career look like? Somewhere
might
other
be the 4th act of his career by now.
Right, and like even Geno Smith, I think has to be viewed as sort of a bridge quarterback for Seattle. Like, they can function with him for another year or 2 as a starter, but eventually, like, they're going to have to replace him.
Yeah, these are guys that in a super flex you want as your 3, and maybe they're your 2 this year. Maybe they're your second best quarterback on your roster for this season, but they're not long for this world. So if you're rostering them, you're starting them in certain spots versus a younger guy, maybe a rookie that you drafted, or one of these other guys that got pushed down a little bit because of injuries or whatever. So these guys hold value in dynasty leagues because the next year, 2 years, they're going to have value. But then after that, the bottom drops out because they retire or, go back up somewhere like Joe Flacco has for a while. So, it's tough to rank these guys. Obviously, this is going to be fluid too with free agency happening. We're going to see a lot of these moves. And of course, we will be here to talk about them. So please stick with us. Follow us along in the off season. You can follow Fitz at Fitz_FF on the Twitter machine. And Fitzy, what do you got coming up?
Well, I've got that Stages with You on Friday, Boggs, that I'm very excited about. Let's see. I just have a story out this morning on Betting Pros, best value picks to win Super Bowl. What is it next year? 58, I think. So, and including a hated divisional rival that I actually think they are an interesting long shot next year. So I'll tease that. Just
which state are they from?
Google Pat Fitzmaurice Betting Pros, and you will see that right away.
Check that out, of course, and join us on the Discord to talk with us about some Dynasty fantasy football. Any questions you guys have, please jump on the Fantasy Pros Discord, and check that out. You can follow me on Twitter at Bogman Sports. I'm here doing this with Fitz, doing the Discord. We will be talking with Joe today as well. If you guys didn't check the flagship, we will be over there, and you can catch me on In This League, doing all my stuff over there. Baseball season is in full swing. We're doing a lot of baseball. I do the War Room with my guy CK over there as well. So please just check out my Twitter at Bogman Sports, and that is it for us. We will see you guys next week. Take it easy, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.